Now you should be able to hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Sweet.
That is excellent. All right.
Where are my Raptors? Raptors.
We'll start
won
here.
Today.
I like that. I'm the Mandalorian.
Nice. You know,
I like that.
I actually had to watch that show twice for me to really get it. I'm gonna change. I don't know if I like this thing. Hold on.
No worries.
That's a little better. Yeah, it's funny. When I first watched Mandalorian, I wasn't thrilled with it, and then I watched it again, and it was a lot better.
Yeah, you know what? And I mean, there's some, you know, a lot of that Star Wars stuff. If you don't have a lot of the beyond the movies backstories and everything, okay, the weight bots kicked in there. But yeah, let's just jump into it in just a few seconds.
Okay, are you hearing the rock music behind you?
Yeah, so that's the little music bot. I'm going to bring the music music bot back up. We'll do like 15 seconds of music, and then I'll do a quick intro, and we'll just jump in. But we'll just keep the cameras on and everything. We'll just be here. So as long as you're ready to go, you can hear me. I can hear you. Talk a little bit for me because you got the earphones on, and I'm not going to be worried about any crosstalk or anything.
Yeah, can you hear that?
Yep. And when I talk, I'm not hearing you come back through any speakers, so it sounds fantastic. Let me just lower my camera a little.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a good angle. I'm terrible. I should be a better camera person, but I'm just not.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's fine.
I guess I could sit up straight.
No, well, the nice thing is, because we're both kind of big guys, our heads at least look proportionate. Usually when I have somebody else on the show, it's like this tiny little person, and I'm trying to go back far enough where I don't make them look like a giant, but you know.
That's true. Well, you know,
all right.
Both manly
no,
men.
This is, you know, we're two good looking dudes. So let's do it. All right. I'm going to get the weight bot to play us a little music, and then we'll jump in and we'll just jump right into it.
Cool.
All right. Oh, and I want to change this real quick while I have a second.
And can we make it the whole screen somehow, or does it just stay those? Oh, there we go.
What's your favorite film that you've done?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I know it. Could be.
You know what?
Two or three.
Master and Commander has a big place in my heart. That was the first one.
All right, Master and Commander.
Yeah, I mean that was the first one. I was having that conversation with myself about how much longer can I go. I need one big job. So I punched my last time clock at a restaurant to go do that movie. And I learned a lot. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. But then I did Sideways right after that. And then Night at Museum was an amazing experience. So, you know, but I guess Master, I mean, especially because it's the 20th anniversary. I can't believe it's 20 years ago.
Right. Exactly. Why am I not?
Man, that's just crazy.
Spelling Commander right here. Master and Commander. I'm just putting this little.
Yeah, but like I said, you know, Night at Museum, we just kind of created that, you know, out of almost not completely out of whole cloth, but I'm really proud of that too.
Oh, well, we'll talk about it too. I was just going to kind of
put.
There's this little fortune cookie thing down there that has a phrase, so I just put Master and Commander was Patrick's favorite movie. Just to have a little something in there. All right, All right,
well,
we should let this guy go.
We should put Night at Museum. I gotta say Night at Museum.
Let's put Night at the Museum in there. Sure.
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? Master and Commander and Night at the Museum were your favorite films to work on?
Yeah, theatrical films. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. Those are great films.
If I had to choose.
I just always forget to put that little info in there, so I thought, let's do it this time.
It's like I'm playing the bass with my little neck folds.
All right. Here we go. jump off in here in about 15 seconds. My head is warm enough now. It's my jacket there a little bit because we do keep it cool in here because the price of natural gas is crazy.
Is that better lighting?
Yeah, looks good.
Gotta get a little warmer, maybe.
Now it looks fine. All right, we're going to go in about 15 seconds. So, well, let me do one more thing. Alexa, remind me in 59 minutes to do our first wrap. Alexa, remind me in 59 minutes to do our first wrap. Excellent. All right. All right. The wait bot there brought us in with some, boy, that sounded very like kind of down in New Orleans kind of music. But this is
it was cool.
Talk with Revolution. My name is Revolution McInnes, and we are going to do what we often do, which is just jump right into it. I have to say, before we do that, though, I am privileged to be able to talk to this really amazing actor who's been doing this for a long time. He is a character actor extraordinaire, and you know his face, and now you get to put that name to that face. And that name is Patrick Gallagher. And I have to say, we had a great conversation last night. I felt like we've already become friends. And I got to tell you, that's
Absolutely.
what I love. Yeah, right, Patrick? That's what I love about this job is you get just to meet really fun and interesting people. We're both about the same age, both good-looking guys. And we're going to talk movies, probably politics, but we're going to talk about what you're interested in, right? Because for me, I put people on the show because I'm interested in them. I like them. And so I want them to, talk about whatever they want to talk about, but I'll shut up. A good host doesn't talk much. Patrick Gallagher, welcome to Talk with Revolution.
How you doing, Rev? I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I noticed that you said movie star nights. I'm waiting. I'm excited to find out who that is.
Right.
That's the reason I came here. Yeah. Who's the movie star?
Well, my friend, you are the movie star. And if you look down in the bottom of the little fortune cookie there, I did put in there that Patrick, I asked him what his favorite movies to work on were. And he's got Master and Commander and Night at the Museum. And I got to tell you what, those are both great films. And as you mentioned earlier in a tweet, Master and Commander, which blows my mind, is the 20th anniversary coming up. And
can't believe that.
So we told this story before we before we actually started the show. And you were telling me that film, and we got to get into your history a little bit here, and this really is getting into it. You said you had you clocked out of what to do that movie. Like this was like you were kind of ready to either it's going to happen now or it's not going to happen kind of situation.
Yeah, I graduated from the National Theater School in May of 1993. God, I can't believe that's 30 years ago this May. Yeah. And like, a lot of other people, I was working a little bit, but had a regular job. And I was at that point, 8, 9 years down the line where you're just thinking, how much longer, when's the break going to come?
Right.
How long can I keep doing this? And I remember, a couple months before that, I kept thinking all I need is just one job. Pays me like, a fairly good, nice chunk of money and I'll be on my way. And it turned out somehow to be that movie, which is why it had such a special place in my heart. I mean, I still don't know how I got it to this day because
who was that directed by?
The amazing Peter Weir.
Okay. Look, I'm going to set this up for you folks a little bit. Here's a guy who's been to a great school, has got great training, and he's like, I'm going to embellish it maybe a little bit. He's kind of like at the end of his ropes, in this acting thing. And he gets a movie with Peter Weir that is arguably, it's a classic. It's a masterpiece. That's a hell of a first film to really work on.
Yeah, and I knew who he was. I was a huge fan of Gallipoli, which is an amazing film that he did. What else had he done before that? Like A Witness was incredible.
Oh,
and so I'm in Vancouver. Yeah, I'm in Vancouver getting this, what they call breakdown. So what happens is cast directors will put a list of all the characters they needed. So they're called breakdowns. And there was this character called Awkward Davies who was described as Welsh, big, British Navy would be uh, um, the modern day equivalent would be Hell's Angels, and I'm like, look at my face. Are you people insane? And I just thought, well, you know what? I'll just go and audition. It's Peter Weir. Maybe he'll see me. Maybe he'll like me for something else. The
Mm-hmm.
audition, if I remember correctly, wasn't really any lines. It was simply an interview with the background casting director, one of the casting directors, and then I got a call back, and he just cast me off of that. And that really sort of changed a lot of how I looked at it, where I didn't worry about what the breakdown said. That's where I learned that they hire us. I remember Peter telling me that I think he believed that 90% of directing was casting. And he said that it was just something I saw in you that was this character. And so from that point on, I didn't worry about whether I was a perfect fit for anything anymore. You just go in and do the best you can, try to have as much truth as you can. I had a great acting coach. I'm still working with him, David Rotenberg, who also gave me some great advice that changed a lot of stuff, that they hire our essence. They hire who we are. All that other stuff doesn't really matter if you're either right for the role or you're not. So, and then
Well,
just
yeah,
to
that's
work on that film
interesting.
with Russell Crowe, and
Russell
just to be
Crowe,
down there in
right?
this and it's huge. I mean, I'd never gone traveling anywhere to work. Go down to Mexico in this huge film with you know all these amazing talented people at the top of their game. I mean, it won an Oscar for cinematography and sound, and it was I mean, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I learned a lot by doing nothing, quote unquote, nothing, because that's why I realized that's what we're supposed to do, is just be. And they used to cut a lot of the stuff out when I would have smaller roles, because you're trying to do too much, you're trying to be interesting. And a lot of times I would just be there, and they kept a lot of it, and I went, "Oh, okay, that's the key. We're not supposed to try to do anything, just be truthful." It was an
Just be.
amazing,
That's a very
amazing experience. Yeah.
Zen thing, brother. Right? I mean,
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think that's a good way of putting it too, because a lot of it, by just being, is we need to be relaxed, we need to be um, comfortable in ourselves, but a lot of it is relaxation. I mean, we would hear that word a lot in theater school, and it took a little while to realize that relaxation for an actor or an artist or a musician or even an athlete, I don't think is the same as relaxation. When we're just chilling on the couch, we still need to be have all of our senses heightened, be ready to go, but not be nervous, not be shut down. So, and by the way, win today by the great Toronto Raptors,
there
grounded
you
out
go.
win with lots of injuries. Way to go! So yeah, that
Well,
was an amazing experience.
I want to stick to the film a little bit, but since you've shown us the Toronto Raptors, you are from Canada. You have dual citizenship, you told me, but where are you from in Canada? I don't think we touched on that
Well,
last night.
yeah, I was born in New Westminster, grew up in Vancouver. My dad was born in Boston, so I was an American born abroad. So I
Ah,
was registered as an American citizen, born abroad in 1968. I'm an old man
66 here,
now.
man. I got a couple on you.
Wow. Well, our lives have meaning because we were born before they walked on the moon.
Oh, good
That's sort
Lord,
of
man. I mean, I have a great grandfather that was 101. Just tell you a quick story. We took him to the Little Red Schoolhouse, although it wasn't red, but the one room schoolhouse that he taught at in the
wow.
18 like 90s or something. And there was this big old tree in the front, and he was upset. He must have been in his late 80s or 90s. He's like, everything is the same because they had kind of made it a historical place or something. But he's like, this damn tree, this big old tree wasn't here. And I remember it being me, but I'm sure it wasn't because I was a kid. Somebody said, well, what was there? Well, I would get to school to work and I'd hitch my horse to this little tree. And they said,
Oh,
Grandpa Sunday,
wow.
that little tree is the big tree, right? So you and I have got you go out into the woods and find a 50-year-old tree. That's going to be a pretty big ass tree, depending on the type. So,
Yeah.
we're big trees,
Yeah.
man.
We are. We are. It's I still remember when you had your car tape deck and you press fast forward and it stopped at the next song all by itself.
Ah, yes.
That was like magic.
Serious tech
It was like,
there.
oh, that was serious tech. I mean, that was badass. I think I had my little Toyota Corolla going, watch this. Boom. Of course, it always never stopped on your favorite song because there's never enough space. There was always one song it wouldn't work on. It was always your favorite song. But
Oh, I was talking to one of my close friends the other day, and we were talking about I'd sent her some songs, and I said, back in the day, I'd have made a mixtape,
yeah,
and I would have had every love song or whatever on that mixtape, and it would have been in a perfect order. And now I can just find a playlist. That one works pretty well, and send it. So, I was going to say the point with my great grandfather is he'd seen a lot from riding a horse
yeah.
to school, and he passed away at 101 in
Wow,
1985. And
wow.
his son, my grandfather, lived to be 92, so they live a long time on that side. And he got all the way to by 84. We had like some personal computers and stuff, but they were big and expensive. But just in terms of, he saw a lot: wars,
Yeah, he was.
technology, and all these things. You know,
Yeah, I mean that generation is amazing because they were alive before there was electricity. It
yeah,
reminds me of this documentary.
cars.
Yeah,
Planes.
it reminds me of this documentary I saw at the Millennium where there were people who had been born before the Millennium and were alive after it. And I remember distinctly one guy saying, I was a kid. They had horse-drawn carriages and dirt roads in Philadelphia, and I lived to see the internet. And it shows how much technology has gone so quickly in the last. Look how fast it's gone. This is what amazes me. We did Night at the Museum in 2006, and they used to give us phones when we were on location because we didn't have the proper phone plans then. They gave us a flip phone because it was before the iPhone. The iPhone is only 20 or
2007 or
50,
something.
2000. It's only 16 years old. Night at the Museum
Yeah.
came out. We shot it before there was an iPhone, and that's how quickly stuff has moved.
Well, here's a funny thing. I
Crazy.
was listening to this book by these guys I love, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And I'm listening to their first book, and I want to listen to their new one. I want to interview them. And I've listened to these guys for 17 years. They have this great podcast. But the Futurism book, which is their second book, which I was listening to an audiobook a little bit, he was talking about, Stephen Novella was talking about all the films just before the iPhone came out and that got it wrong. I think he was talking about that film with Tom Cruise in the future. It's a fun
Minority Report.
Minority Report. And he said what futurists do is they take whatever's happening now and extrapolate it, which usually
Yeah,
doesn't work because the phones were really tiny. But in
yeah.
fact, what happened is I got this thing
I
is as
know.
big as my head, and I have a
I
giant
know.
head. You know what I mean? And so the futurists can't, that's just hard for them to figure out. But what you and I have even seen in our lifetimes, the first computers I saw at school that I can remember were the tower kind of Macs,
Yep.
that had they were so innovative because they had a black and white screen, not just a black screen with white letters. They had a white
Yep.
screen. And man, they were expensive, and they could
Yep.
hardly do anything. If I could show you a picture of my Rodecaster here that I use as my mixing board, when I was in the sound reinforcement business, when I was an operations manager for a sound company, we did the front of house sound for bands and concerts and stuff. And we would buy boards. Now they were slightly different, but with 128 inputs, this thing only has maybe 9. However, they would be $1 million. This can do
Wow.
1,000 times more than that board ever could. And it's $700. So,
Yeah.
technology has gotten us far, but back to Master and Commander. Oh, go ahead. Finish your
Yeah.
thought. And then,
Well, no, it's funny because I find that stuff really fascinating too. Because at least they're trying now on films to get the future proper. And it
yes,
is really difficult to do. It just reminded me of we still we still had one of the first top loading VCRs, and that was like $500, and it
and
still works.
$500 was like
Yeah,
$4,000.
yeah, and it still works, and it's funny to think how quickly technology has moved. I mean, the VCR lasted quite a while, and then you could sort of press a code to record it rather than having to record it. Then you get the DVD players, you get the angles, and the DVD players just disappeared, and it's just moving so damn fast. It's
Right.
incredible. you know?
Well, even
So,
in your industry, I want to definitely talk because we were talking about Mandalorian a little bit too. But just quickly back to Master and Commander because I really want people to kind of understand whenever we do these things, like what it's like to do whatever you're doing, whether you're a scientist or you're an actor. But on that set, well, I'll bring Mandalorian in because so I know some folks that are like on the crew, and I know like I've got a kind of an acquaintance who's like a full time extra on the Boba Fett, right? And
yeah.
with Mandalorian, that is all that new Unreal Engine technology, video screens, and all of that. But when you're on Master and Commander, did how much of that? Did you shoot any of that in a soundstage, or and how much of that were you actually on a ship? And like,
Well,
what was that like?
well, I think what makes that movie, one of the things that makes the movie so great is how authentic Peter wanted it to be, and for example, some of the characters would have little knickknacks that their characters had, but we couldn't have them if they weren't of the period. So they
Nice.
did an entire replica of they took a ship called the Rose and they built it, and that could go out to sea. We went out to sea about 6 days,
Oh
and
yeah,
that
wait a
was an
minute. Hold on,
amazing
hold on. I
experience.
just wait.
Yeah,
They built a ship that was seaworthy to shoot
no,
on.
they bought a ship and then made it look like that. Then they
Oh,
replicated that ship. Then they replicated that entire ship in the tanks at the Fox Studios. Then that's where a
wow.
bulk of it was shot. And then they had sound stages for some of the stuff underneath and where the crew
Below
would
decks
would
and stuff.
yeah, and you see how low those decks were if you've seen it? They made those 25% higher for us. Those decks were 25% lower in real life. So so
Wow.
so when you're seeing a lot of the storm, that's on the gimbal. That's a full replica of the ship on a tank that moved on gimbals. They built the French ship. So when we showed up in Rosarito, we saw the skeleton of the French ship being built, and after 4 months, they had it built, put them together, and that's how the battle scene happened. But they did have a ship that we went out to sea on 6 days because we trained for 2 weeks. So we went down there.
Like to be
We had a boot
to
camp,
be shipworthy.
and we got shirts, and Russell gave us shirts, and
Arr.
the whatever rank you were was a different color shirt. We had to sew on that first night our name tags. We had to learn how to fire the guns. I don't know, that scene where we had to fire the guns in a certain amount of time. We had to do that. Like there was a
Wow.
certain amount of time that we had to learn how to do it. We could have actually fired those guns and sailed that ship if we'd have had to. And that's part of what I think makes that movie so great because, we were really a crew. Peter handpicked every single background person. I remember him telling us that we're trying to make the world's largest independent movie and that the ship itself was a character, the background were a character. But I'll tell you, I'll never forget. We went out to sea one day. Um, we all got sick, 'cause, we got seasick. That's another story. But
Uh huh.
it was out on an engine, and then we turned the engines off and unfurled the sails. And I swear to God, I heard that ship sigh, and you could almost hear that ship just go yeehaw, and it was a whole different experience when it was just under wind power. And I remember being out there. There's a couple of the scenes where we were supposed to be at the Galapagos, which was off the coast of Mexico, and no crew or cameras were on the ship, and it was just us in costume. I remember looking around going, this is as close as we're ever going to get to seeing what this was actually like.
Right.
It was an amazing experience, and just I learned a lot about the attention to detail. I learned a lot about work ethic from Russell. To watch him work was an amazing experience for me. Um, I remember, he just takes things so seriously, and that's where I learned that
Right.
that it has to be important. For example, we have something called coverage where when you have a close up, it'll be on the actor that's shooting, and then the other people will be behind camera and be doing the scene with them. He takes it so seriously, and the overall film is so important that even after 12 hours, if it was someone else's coverage, he would be there because he knows that you're going to get a better performance speaking to him.
If you're talking to
And a
him,
lot of
not just to
stars
the
wouldn't do
camera
that.
and the AD or
Yeah,
something, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I learned a lot about work ethic from him. I learned a lot about Peter Weir was such an amazing artist. He loved blood. He had his own little blood bucket. So in all the battle scenes, the makeup would put blood on it. He'd just come by and squirt more blood on you. I was a little nervous because they were all British, and I show up and they're going, "How did this guy from Vancouver get this damn job?" I didn't know I had to do
Right.
a Welsh accent until I got down there. Luckily, there
Oh
were
no
four Welsh
shit.
guys. No, I didn't know. We didn't know about the wig was we didn't know what to do with the hair. So at the last minute, we just shaved my head, and that was a wig that so I had a shaved head the whole time. I had no idea what I was doing. Luckily, the
God, a
crew was
Welsh
really great.
accent too. That's pretty specific.
Yeah, and there's about four of them. One of my proudest moments was that it was in the contract that they didn't have to use my voice. And they when the movie came out, it was me. And when we went to the premiere in London, people were amazed that I was American because I knew I could get it past the Americans, but I was able to get it past the Brits. And I was very, very proud of
That's
that. And it's
sweet,
hard
dude.
because and there were different types of Welsh accents. So when we were shooting, I would just have Joe go in my ear and say the line, say the line, say the line, and go, okay, follow him to the gates of hell. Then we had to do ADR later on. So they call me and say, we're going to do ADR, which is looping lines. And
Right.
I'm like, is Joe coming? I'm like, how am I supposed to do this? I had to do the lines by myself, and they still kept them. And it was an incredible experience. We hung out at this great hotel. We worked really hard. We also played really hard. Played a lot of poker. I was in Rosarito, Mexico. Uh, and I learned, and I still use a lot of what I learned. I learned how to be on location, which is a skill. Looking back, I could tell the actors that had been on location, the ones that hadn't, because you need to learn how to manage your time. You need to learn how to manage boredom. You need to not play too hard and not work too hard and find that balance. Yeah, it was that's a big turning point for me. That one, and then Sideways right after that the next year, and then Night at Museum. Those are sort of three kind of turning point, or not turning point, but kind of milestone things in my career. And then a TV show I didn't count it called Da Vinci's Inquest, which is the first time I ever played a character more than once was on that. And
Ah,
those are the sort of the things where I learned a lot about what I do now. So,
well, there was a thought that came to me, and then I was hearing myself, and I realized because tonight I switched to the earbuds, and I was hearing it through my headphones. But what was this? What was the sec? Give me the three movies again. The names just for me. I know everybody else heard
well,
them.
it was Master and Commander. I got that. I remember I punched out of the white spot in Vancouver. My last ever punching out of a regular job. I punched my last time clock on Mother's Day of 2002 and went down to Mexico like 4 days later. So we shot that from June until September 2002. Then I got Sideways the next year because I went to theater school with Sandra Oh. And so I then got to work with the amazing Alexander Payne right after that. Two Oscar winning nominated movies in a row that I got to be a small part of. I learned a whole shitload on that too. Um, that one, I knew Sandra and I was right for the part. It was like a big Hawaiian guy. It's based on real people. And I show up, and it dawned on me when I got there that Alexander had not auditioned me. He'd never seen me act. I got really nervous. And so I didn't do anything, which again was what I learned we're supposed to do. I was so young and naive. We shot it. We did a screening of Sideways in Toronto. One of the executives from the studio, I was at the dinner. It's like, oh, I didn't know you were an actor. I just thought you were a real bartender. And I was so naive. I thought, oh shit, I did a crappy job. Only later did I realize that that's what we're supposed to have people believe, that I wasn't an actor. I was just a real bartender.
Right.
Um, and
That's a
and
damn good compliment.
yeah, but at the time I didn't know. I was like, oh shit, I did a crappy job. And it kind of amazes me what sinks in afterwards. I remember them telling us in theater school that you're going to wonder what you'd learned in this 3 years, and what'll happen is 6 years down the road you just realize, oh, I learned that at school, or I've learned this, or I've got this experience, and it's all true. So those two were big, uh, and then Master. I still have no idea how I got Night at the Museum either. That was an incredible experience as well. I've been really fortunate. I got to work with Russell Crowe and Peter Weir and Paul Bettany and all these great British actors, and then Paul
Right.
Giamatti and Alexander Payne, and then Sean Levy and Robin Williams and Ben Stiller. I mean, Ricky Gervais. I mean, I was really, really, really fortunate. And I realized in hindsight, that's why I like to do these kinds of things. And I talk to a lot of friends, acting classes, and people that teach, because it helps me realize in hindsight what I learned on those things,
Yeah.
you know?
That's
So,
great. And dude, it's why I put movie star night on there. You know what I mean? I know you're a character actor, and so it's always, the stars get the top billing. But I will say this: you've had such a great breadth of work. And like you said, there are lots of character actors out there, but not all of them got to work with all the people that you've got to work
No,
with. I mean, that's a
yeah,
serious freaking roll call of people, you know?
yeah, and I really appreciate it. And there were times in my career when I didn't, and I had to learn to realize. I think that's the biggest skill is for me had to learn how to be in this business,
Yeah.
and in hindsight, I appreciate it even more than I did. I used to worry about how much money am I getting paid and why can't I get this role? And I realized that, that stuff will come. That's not what's important. I got to work with Robin Williams, and I made Robin Williams laugh.
Hey.
I can tell you a story about him. This is why he was one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. I got Night at Museum, and I went into audition for it. And originally, Attila the Hun had lines. I think the audition was "Bring me Doom." I had sent my guys to go get me the Doom game. So we do the callback with the director Sean, and I do it, and he goes, "That was really good, but I'm just see if you can try something. Well, we might not do this. I'm just trying to think. We're gonna maybe have a language I can't explain." I said, "Do you want like evil Asian dictator circa 1250 gibberish language?" He goes, "Yes." So I just made something up, get the role, show up, and I'm like, "What the f am I doing here? I shouldn't be here. Like, look who I'm with." And I was really just scared and shutting down. And I did something, and I know he did this on purpose. I did something, and Robin came up to me and said, "That was really funny." And I know he could sense that I was scared, and I know that he knew that exactly what happened. I would go, "Well, if he thinks I'm funny, I must be doing okay." And that little loosening of my fear, that little loosening of my tension, then made me be able to like get brave and make big decisions and ask the questions. And I was able to one day just kind of bring out my ideas because probably I made that entire language up as we went along. Probably 30% of that movie was improv. That magic scene,
Nice.
literally, they just said you're going to do magic scene with Ben. I'm like, what the hell is that?
What is that? Where's the
And
rest on the paper?
where's where? And we just went down and came. And Ben was also incredibly generous because between action and cut, you're just two actors, and he was all about making the movie better. Which then helps make us better. And that's what I learned from watching those really big stars that I really respect. Is for them, it's about not how great they are. It's about the story. It's about the project. It all comes down to that. Yeah, that's where I came up with the Magi So was all in a rehearsal.
That is wild.
All that stuff. Yeah.
And I love the behind the scenes. And my buddy Johnny Invisible was in here before, and I want to say hi to Sandra there, that Sonia that just came in. The when you're working on a film like that, and you are going, I love that you're sharing this too, especially all my friends and that are actors or wanting to be actors and all this stuff. I mean, this is a great thing to listen to, because I am sure, and I heard Ron Howard on Smartless the other day talking about some very similar things. And I love when those guys talk and all the behind the scenes stuff that they talk about. It's a great podcast. And when you have an actor, I'm sure you've been on movie sets that wasn't necessarily the case. Not everybody's
No, it
the
was
same,
no, it was yeah.
but
That's par for the course.
right, that's life, right? You get all kinds of people. But when you hear about that commitment, not to themselves, but to the film, that
Yeah,
dedication that they want this thing to be successful. Yes, these folks are famous. Yes, they can get paid a lot of money, but that they can stay in it into the whole point of it. Even yourself, after all these years, grow, improve, admit, and change. That's really,
absolutely.
really big, because that's growth, and that is going to make you better. And they're there to
And,
help make you better.
and they're there, and it is just time, but it's also how I learned how I like to work. With respect for people, with kindness for people. It's what I call being the generous actor. Just to be there, and we're all doing the same thing. Also realizing that when we get there at 5 o'clock in the morning, the crew's been there since 4, and when we leave
Right.
12 hours later at 6, they're leaving 13 hours later at 7 o'clock. And to me, I really like sets, whether it's TV or film, where there is this sense of it being a family and a team. You know, I just did a show called Joe Pickett, which I call a unicorn show, which was one of the most amazing experiences for that I've ever been on. You know, the cast genuinely got together and liked each other. We respected each other as people and doing the work. The crew, most of the crew all came back for season two because, you know, they were given the respect that they deserve, and they were amazing, and they wanted to work with us again. We wanted to work with them, and that's the kind of stuff I like to do. Now there are times when, you know, people have bad days. You know, a show's in its eighth year, it becomes a little bit less like that. And you know what? Ultimately, then you just go back to your skill, which you learn over time, which is do it as a job. And I will tell anyone who wants to be an actor, I remember on my first job at Young People's Theatre in Toronto, and there was, I can't remember his name. I feel so bad about this. There was an older actor who was about my age now. I was 25, I think. And he was so good. And I remember asking him, like, wow, I hope I can be that good. Were you this good when you were my age? He goes, it's just time, son, time and experience. And he's right. You know, if you have the attitude of trying to learn and being open, you're just gonna get better. Experience is really important. Another acting coach of mine, Joe Police, had this great phrase that I always go back on too. I would work with him, and then, you know, there were certain questions you ask and things you do in part of the craft where you make the turn and you figure out, am I attacking and what the next beat is. And well, I liked the class because there were a combination of like sort of some more experienced actors, but a lot of younger actors. And I was working with one young actor, and he's like you don't even do all this stuff that Joe's teaching us. You don't even do it anymore. I said, yeah, I do it. I just do it faster. And Joe had this thing. It's like driving a car. When we're 16, we first get in the car, we're like this, 10 and 2, looking down the road, everything's straight. A year later, we're one hand on the wheel, turn on the radio, talk on the phone, smoke, because it becomes instinctual. And I said, and that's sort of what I told this person. I said, it becomes instinctual, and it's just time and experience, you know, and being open.
I think because I went to film school and eventually dropped out because I was making more as a shooter than my professors were making. Like they were like, wait, can you get me a job sometimes? You know, I'd stumbled into some good work, and in a lot of ways I wish I had stayed, but life is what it is. I'm very happy where I am. But when I took the acting classes that I took, I really took them because, of course, everybody goes to film school to be a director. You know, it's like baseball. All those players on the field that are in all those positions, when they were 12, they were probably all pitchers because pitchers are usually the best player. And so it was that way, you know, for me, for acting. You know, I wanted to be a director, and I've directed tons of commercials and industrial films and stuff. I've done a lot of things in my life, but acting is hard. For me, if you said, hey, Rev, we're going to run into the 7-Eleven and I need you to play a character, but I can ad lib it, right? I need, you know, we're going to go rob the place or something, right? Play a funny, lame guy and distract me. I could do that. But if you give me lines and the character, and I have to have the backstory and all, I'm like, I'm just overwhelmed.
But I think you could do that. First of all, I want to say I know you're a good director already because it was very smart of you to take an acting class. I think every director should take an acting class because, you know, there's a very particular vocabulary we use. There's a very particular way that we think. And I think I really like directors who just at least take the class to know how to communicate with us, understand what the experience is, you know. But you could do it because all you have, if I was directing you or you asked me advice, what you just said you could do the improv thing. Don't act the lines. Be that, and you just have the lines come out.
Right.
And that's really all it is. And it's that's that whole thing they talk about doing less. And when I talked earlier about
I love that. That is
command,
yes, and that was so great, Patrick, because you know we know that almost all of us in almost everything we do, but we don't do it until
we don't do it.
Yes, yeah, and that is incredibly informative.
We have to learn what that feels like. Because that's what I was talking about with the Master Commander, where I didn't do anything and they kept it all because it was truthful. Whereas before, I would be trying to do that. Oh, I've got to be the funny guy, so I'm going to try to be interesting. And they would cut 2 of my 4 lines. But when I
Right.
didn't know what I was doing, that's where you realize that instinctually you're just being that character anyway. And then you get that as a base. Then what becomes fun, it's a little bit like arranging music, not composing it. Then we go, okay, I'm going to throw this in, or I'm going to throw a little bit of anger in, or I'm going to remember that, it's betrayal. I remember that he ran away from home, or remember that he's actually secretly in love with this person. And you throw that kind of stuff on. But the base is just that being, which you need to trust is going to be there if you've done the work, which is not as much as people think it needs to be, I believe. You ask questions and you answer them. To me, it all comes down to why. It's all about
Mm-hmm.
why.
Why are you there? Where are you? What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, you've got the who, what, when, where, why, and sometimes how of journalism. Every mammal and animal knows all of those. A lion knows what the prey is. An elephant knows where stuff is. They know when it is because of the season. They know who it is. If it's a dog, knows who their owner is or their master. They'll even know how to open something. But the only
Mm-hmm.
animal that asks why is us, and that's what separates us from them, and that's what makes us human. And what makes us human is the basis of all art and acting. It's
I
because
love that.
it's all about why, and the why. It's sometimes about how. Like if you're doing a scene, it's how am I going to get what I want. It all comes down to why is this happening, and that will inform the how, because the where is in the script, the what is in the script, the when is in the script, the who is in the script. It's the why that makes it art to me, and
Yeah.
that's
Well,
looking at.
and you know what? You bring that up of what makes us different and how all of these things work, because putting being able to have that little bit extra of of asking the question, of being there, and kind of, I talk about this, and this is anecdotal to everybody's subconscious because I've never really looked it up. But when you look at a guy like Picasso and you happen to be able to see his early kind of art school work, the dude is as good as Rembrandt Van Ryn. His work is beautiful. But what Picasso becomes is the unlearning of all of
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
that very much feels like the same thing, right? Don't get me wrong. Obviously, acting school is important, and you have a lingo and everything, but you have to unlearn to be to be yourself, to be that other thing, right?
yeah. To be human. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Picasso and painters are about love. I mean, that's what makes it's what makes us human is what makes art. I mean, the why doesn't really apply to painting as much as it, but the why for me applies to the basis. It's not all just that, but to me, why is the basis of most of acting for me. Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I angry? Why is this happening? Why do I feel like this? But really, it is being human, which is love and anger and emotions. I
Right.
think all other animals don't necessarily have emotions in the same way that they can process. They don't have a self consciousness in the same way. They'll have
Right.
instinct. And what makes us human is what makes us interesting, is what makes art. It also
Well,
makes terrible things in the world too. And that's part,
yes,
and that's
but
that's part of life.
there's a dark and a light, not a good and a bad.
Yeah,
You need one for the
yeah,
other. And I think as you get older, hopefully you learn that as well. The thing that
yeah,
I was going to have fun with was when you said, art and those things are what makes us humans. I always say this, and again, not to disparage people that maybe think they've been kidnapped by aliens. I mean, there's an explanation for a lot of that, and that's a
yeah,
paragogic state. I think it's what it's called when you go into REM sleep, but you're semi-conscious, and you feel like somebody's on your chest, like a demon. But a lot of the mind can do a lot of amazing things. But the point is, if aliens to me were going to come to Earth, they wouldn't come to do experiments on us. They can transcend space and time. Where they would come, why they would maybe come to Earth is they would want to know they have an equivalent of Beethoven. They have an equivalent of Peter Weir. They have an equivalent of Picasso.
theoretically, hopefully,
They
yeah,
would want to know our art. They would want to know our culture. They would want to know the beautiful things that we do because that's what they would want to experience.
yes. Well, the Democrats of the aliens would. The Republicans would want to, of the aliens would want to know how to take us over and lie to us and spread their misinformation.
Right. We could be like
So
dinner. Like, look, if
yeah,
they're going to fly
yeah,
all the way here from Alpha Prime 4, there's plenty of other places to eat. And if they can, again, transcend space and time, I think they can probably make
Yeah.
their own food without having us for dinner.
Yeah, it's we could get into that. That's one of the things of my hobbies. I love astronomy and cosmology and the whole idea,
Oh,
man.
awesome.
I watch those shows all the time. If there was
Me too.
if there was anything else I could do, the two things I would have done if I could have done them would have been be a marine biologist until I saw
Nice.
Jaws. That sort of turned me off it for a while, or be an astronomer because
Mm,
uh, uh, because it's the mystery, this world that we don't know anything about. That's what I love about both of those things.
right.
But I
I have a,
mean, I just hope that I live long enough for us to see us walk on Mars and to see
mhm.
us discover life on another planet. Because to me that will be
Well,
the biggest scientific discovery in human history,
we
and
just
answer that
had,
question, that big
mhm.
question: Are we alone?
Well, we just had the James Webb point at a system for about 5 hours the other day that I heard that had about 5 planets in the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah,
So you and I, if we live a little bit longer, certainly my son and daughter will, but yes, hopefully we'll be around for a while. I think we will definitely see confirmation of a planet that's full of water with like oxygen in the atmosphere. And of course,
yeah.
they can tell by the wavelengths of light
A
if there's a
light.
lot
Yep,
of like chlorophyll or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm not, I don't know my science
yep.
perfectly, but I understand the basics. And then we'll be able to say, okay, if you have these X amount of ingredients, it's very highly probable that
It
there's
just makes
life there.
sense.
And
Yeah,
yes, and that will be the confirmation we need, because finding a microbe or two of no longer living on Mars, that'll be profound. But and that would be interesting, and it would change things. But being able to say there's another planet that is
that
pretty
has.
much habitable, that
Yeah,
would mean that even statistically, us finding that planet, because there are trillions of planets across these different galaxies, would
trillions.
mean it
Yeah,
must be everywhere.
yeah, and it's so funny and it's so true because there are trillions of planets in our galaxy. Even if one in a million was like us, that's tens of millions of planets. It may even be closer because do you know Cassini that went to Saturn?
Yeah.
So they were up there, and there's a moon called Enceladus, which they thought was just an ice moon. They thought there was no big deal. So
Yeah.
they're flying through, they decided to take a picture, and they saw plumes of water being shot out hundreds of miles. So they decided to fly the ship through there, and that water had organic molecules. So now they're thinking there's a possibility there is an ocean around a
Under
moon of
Enceladus,
there.
right.
There could be Saturn fishies, and that it
Oh
could be
no, no
that
doubt.
close.
Right.
You know, and
The
that
tidal
amazes me.
forces, the tidal forces on those moons, those water moons, even if they don't have a hot core, the tidal forces would keep it
Forces
warm. Would
friction.
keep it
Yeah,
warm.
you
And
and I are
they're
kindred
right.
spirits because I love that
The
stuff.
odds of let's say like dolphin level intelligence might be low, but like giant squid like things and stuff like that,
Sure.
it could be teeming with that, because
Yeah, I mean,
look
well,
what's
yeah. I would
down
go.
super deep on this planet. I mean, there's this one squid that they've only
Yeah.
found like juvenile versions of, that like is like would scare the bejesus out of you. The thing is so big. There's stuff down there
Yep.
that we will never know of. You know what I mean? Because the ocean takes care of it. It never comes up here. You know?
Well, there's also so much stuff. I watched that the Blue Planet, and they went down. This was only in the last, I believe, maybe I don't know exactly the last 15 years. We discovered that something like 12,000 feet down out of the Earth's vents, there are tube worms that have never seen the
Yeah.
sun. There's a whole
Right.
ecosystem that simply comes from the heat of the core of the planet. And it's just
Yeah.
it just
The
and
odds
I
of
think it not being is almost impossible because you're right, it's all about chemical action.
right.
It's going to happen one in a million times. That's all we need
But
for
that's all
these
we need,
chemicals to
because
come
the
together in your life.
basic
That's all we need.
building blocks of life, which is from no life, certain chemicals that then become, cells or proteins or however all that works, they're all common materials. It wasn't
Yep.
like it was rare
Yeah.
here. And again, it's kind of like, and I ebb and flow about the idea of us living in a simulation. But one of the fun ways to think about it is if we are in a simulation, one of the proofs will be that if we can simulate a universe, us, well, guess what? The odds of us being the first of anybody to ever create a simulation of another universe is practically nil, which would mean we're already in a simulation because it's been simulated again and again and again. And so, right now, there are other reasons to think that we're not. But regardless of that, if you start to look at things like multiple universes and all of these things, and the other fun thing too is I got a good description of time once. I love that we're having this dialogue here tonight. I love this stuff. That
I love this stuff too.
Really took time into this in this linear sense in this way. Like think of it as almost like when you open up like a grand piano, you have just all of the strings, right? So if I am back in the past here, right, and I go out into the universe here, and then I come back here, I'm coming back ahead in time. And so though time from our understanding of physics to go into the past might be easier than the future, when you really look at the marvelous thing that is time, it is in a way able, you know what I mean? It would be possible in a way to do it. The mechanics of it, creating the wormholes and all of that may be impossible, but time itself is in like so many things. Just quickly too, like if I were to throw a baseball at you, the only way that you can dodge it is because our brain, it's kind of like the movie with Blade Runner where it makes our brain is like, wait, that looks like he has a baseball in his hand. Let's make it look like a baseball. Okay, we know what happens with baseballs. It's probably going to be thrown at us. Oh, wait, looks like he's about ready to throw. And everything that we see is just our brain is making it up a split second before. Because otherwise, every time that baseball would hit us square in the face if that's where it was thrown, because everything we do and see is slightly into the future because our brain projects it. So my brain right now is saying that pretty much looks like Patrick Gallagher. He's got a Raptor shirt on. I think that's a basketball. Looks like some cool art back there. But my brain doesn't know it for sure. Right. You know what I mean? But I depend on my brain to do that. And that's the same way with space and time.
Yeah, it's fascinating because then you've got space time and, I don't know a lot about it, but my understanding is that is actually a legitimate study in physics is whether we're a simulation, whether we're mathematics can work it. I mean, I watch How the Universe Works all the time. You should get one of those guys on, by the way.
Oh yeah, I do have them on. And sometimes if I get some, I have you come on too. I have a friend who is she just switched kind of, but she's basically a dark matter scientist. Yeah. And she's had some pretty interesting discoveries that she's been a part of. And she can go to a certain point. Okay. So I had a great conversation one time with Dr. Kip Thorne, who is pretty much the modern, black hole guy, right? I mean, you got Hawking and stuff before him. I mean, this dude's intelligence it's on 1,000, right? It's off the chain. And at that time, that was my first wife. And we would go, there's this place here in Illinois called Fermi Lab, where they had one of the first really big particle accelerators. And they would have lectures like once a month or whatever. And so we would go to these science lectures and it's like Kip Thorne. I'm like, oh my God, Kip Thorne. That's awesome. And my ex-wife would be like, please don't ask any questions because, I've been here before. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like Kip Thorne and he's going to have a Q&A. So I'm like literally ready to raise my hand. And she's like, don't do it. Because I then get into a 10-minute dialogue with Kip Thorne about black holes. Everybody else is going like, when do I get my chance? Because I mean, I've been a natural interviewer my whole life. But then he takes me like my friends do. And my friend, Dr. Jasmine Berry, who's into, she's a neuroscience AI person. It gets me to the point where I get to this wall. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I have no idea what you just said beyond that. I'm not a physicist, but I love being taken to the limit of my own experience.
Absolutely. And what I love too is eventually they get to the wall and it becomes philosophy,
philosophy is science, my friend. Exactly. 100%.
But to me, the whole thing is about asking the question, and it's fascinating. And look at what we've learned We didn't really know black holes. I'm not 100% sure, but we didn't really even know black holes existed until just very recently. They were
Yeah,
theoretical, and now we have a
complete
freaking picture of them.
confirmation.
Yep.
Right, right. Complete
And they're
confirmation
in
in that
every,
sense of that image. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and they
100%.
also realize now that every galaxy has a supermassive black hole in it, and
Which is
there's little
freaky.
black hole. There's black holes flying through space. I mean, it's just crazy, and it
Right.
puts everything in perspective. And for me, it at the same time makes us really feel really small, but also because of that smallness makes me really appreciate life and makes us feel more important at the same time. It has that weird dichotomy,
No, we should give
because this is all
ourselves,
we have.
right. We should give ourselves importance because, again, to be able to fold space, which is what it would take more or less, because even the Starship Enterprise can't get anywhere fast enough.
No.
In the
I mean, they
technology
can't
that
get to
they're
the delta. They can't get to the delta quadrant.
the Delta
So
Quadrant, for
we're
God's sakes,
stuck
right?
there. Yeah,
Right.
and that's not that
Exactly.
damn far.
Makes for high drama. The other fun thing about Star
There you
Trek is
go.
all the aliens are bipedal. Couldn't we just have one of them, have four limbs or whatever? But I mean, that was makeup and
Yeah,
everything for the time, of course. But
yeah,
now they do with special effects and VFX. But the thing is that, and we are a product of our time so much. But all of these things about folding space, and even if we can confirm even some kind of civilization, like in the movie, with Jodie Foster, there's no way they're ever going to see us and we're ever going to see them. They're billions of light years away. And so
yeah.
we are alone in the universe. Even if it's teeming with intelligent life, we will
Absolutely.
always
Yeah,
be alone. And so we have to
yeah,
treat each other as the rarest, most valuable creatures in the universe. And for God's sakes, we don't, but we should.
yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's a little bit like living in Los Angeles. It's so big. You got to make your world small here. That's how you survive. You know,
In
but
LA,
I
I
live in
like
the city.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I didn't like it at first. I realized you especially because it's so spread out that the way to for me to survive in LA is you live in your neighborhood, even though you realize it goes on for 30, 40 miles in every direction. But that's
Yeah.
daunting, and that's a pain in the ass to think about. So you make it your little world, and that's sort of how we need to be with humanity. I mean, the other thing too is people say, how why haven't we discovered it? Well, there's a billion stars in our galaxy. There's billions of galaxies in the universe. It's been 13 billion light years. I mean, 10,000 years is nothing. There could have been, even if we see a society, they're 100 million years ago. I mean, a million.
Right. Right. They could be long
There could have
gone.
been stuff long gone, and the odds of finding them at that right time. It's sort of like putting everything on the planet right now. I'm talking every piece of garbage,
Right.
absolutely everything there is on the planet for for one family to live in Minnesota, one family to live at the tip of Africa, and wonder why they don't meet each other if somebody popped in for 4 seconds. Oh, nothing's here. It just
Right.
it's just yeah, I love that stuff, especially when I
I
start
do
believing it.
too.
Because then
It
I'm just like, whoa, yeah,
And we're really, we're lucky to live in the first world. We're lucky to live in this time where we can
yep,
even contemplate our own existence, where we are, and have some measure of. And I was getting into this debate with somebody today. Um, it's a word that works. It's not the exact right word, but you got to kind of have faith in your scientists that they know what they're doing. But what
yeah,
happens is people misunderstand the way science works. And I like to explain it to people this way,
absolutely,
because
absolutely,
most scientists, in fact, every scientist that has ever lived, except for a handful relative to however many there were, their whole life is failure. They never make a big discovery. If they do make a discovery, somebody's going to come along and kick it out because we progress changes things as we go forward. And people think, okay, science said this thing last week, and then 3 weeks later it says this. Yes, exactly. That means it's working.
because they learned from it. They learned from the thing that now
Right.
they
But
call
people
wrong.
think
Yeah,
when it's wrong, oh God, they suck at science. No, they're actually really
yeah,
good at it. And can you imagine being the scientist that wins the Nobel Prize, lives long enough for somebody else to win a Nobel Prize saying you were wrong? But that
you're
scientist
wrong.
that was wrong, he would be saying, oh, hell yeah, okay, because they built on
And
my work and they proved something different.
absolutely, and I had argued with a friend of mine who's quite religious, who would try to use that as a reason to discount to discount science. Oh, well, they're wrong. And I said, well, this is how they're wrong. We first thought that the sun revolved around the earth. And then we were wrong. Because we were wrong, we then realized something new. And that wrong built on that. Then we thought, okay, there were only one planet around the sun, and that was wrong because there was more. Not that it was off base. We realized that there was more. It's not that we were wrong, it's we didn't know everything. And then we realized that we thought galaxies were it. And then we realized there's hundreds of millions of galaxies. And then, and I said, that's how it works. A theory in science is not a theory of like why you think such and such cheated on someone. It's not kind of a theory. It's not how we have theories, and it's hard to explain sometimes.
Well, and in science, I'm going to do just a 1 hour wrap. We're going to keep talking, but cool. but I'm going to do a little wrapping to just break it up to the first hour here. But in science, it is the opposite. I can't remember what the other thing is. There's a theory, and then there's theory of evolution, but we think of theory in the layperson's terms as, well, it's just an idea. But in fact, theory means fact, and whatever that opposite word is that I can't think about right now. And so you can understand why the layperson gets confused. And I talk about this to my scientist friends because the ones that I can have on the show, first happens to them when they get into science is they have to unlearn being a regular person and only talk science. Then if they want to talk science to the regular person, they have to relearn how to be a regular person again and still be a scientist. Very tough. It is about 1 hour in. Patrick Gallagher and I are going to keep talking, but I'm going to do a wrap up here. So if we put this first part out into a podcast, we've got that first hour. I've got to say, Patrick, that holy cow, that hour went fast. I hope
go very fast,
for sure we get to do this more than once. You're going to be welcome back again. This is fantastic. Anytime. What people have been able to learn just about acting tonight through your experiences, I think everybody that acts or wants to act should take a look at that. So this has been absolutely phenomenal. We've had lots of other great conversations, and we're going to keep it going. But my name is Revolution McInnes. I have been with Patrick Gallagher on Talk with Revolution. This has been an honor, my friend. This has been a fantastic show.
It's been a real pleasure for me too. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'd love to come back anytime because I love talking about just talking. I love just talking, and it's been great. And, if someone can learn something or get inspiration, that'd be great. And I should just say all that stuff about acting, that's just my opinion. That's what I've learned. Ultimately, it comes down to do what works for you. That's really what it comes. Be you and do you. That's what I would break it down to.
That's excellent. And I love that too, because we both have, it's that Zen thing to be, just be, folks. It is a great place to get to. You can't stay there. You just got to keep going back to it and fighting for it. We will see you in just a second, everybody. But if you're listening to this for the first hour, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Revolution McInnes. Peace be with you and namaste. All right, man. Then,
cool.
No, so,
I actually, this is a good time to break. I've got to go get a charger. Do you have 2 seconds?
Dude, yes, we can take a break. 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
And I made you a producer, so you can shut your camera off if you want. We can take 3 minutes, whatever you want to do.
I'll just leave it like here. I just realized that I didn't charge this. I'm down to 11%, so I'm going to go get a charger. I'll be 2 seconds.
Perfect.
Cool.
Perfect.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. If, I guess Sonia is in here. Sonia, if you'd like to come up and say hi, you don't have to. So don't get, if I'm going to invite you to speak, but you don't have to do that. But I like to, let folks that are down there. If you are listening to this in the replay, which I hope you are, we are going to be, hopefully tomorrow, we will have so far this week in the chai with my friend and Dr. Ali Neitzel, and we will be doing so far this week in the chai is kind of based on Chicago and politics, but we're going to do big city politics. We're going to do a lot of things, and hopefully once that show gets rolling, because we can have Patrick on there too and talk some politics, and I think we'll talk some politics here in a few minutes, because that is probably, I would guess, now that you're back, Patrick, that the thing that I noticed first about you would have probably been a political, tweet. I didn't
Oh,
necessarily know
yeah,
you were an
yeah,
actor. Of course, when I saw that you were politics and an actor, I'm like, well, that dude's badass right there. I want to know that guy.
yeah. You
And
looked at my Twitter feed, didn't you? Yeah, my Twitter feed is all just "F you, Trump," basically.
yeah, well,
You
that's,
know.
hey, so's mine. Although now, because I'm kind of, making these marks. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. We'll just let you go ahead. Siri, you can stop talking now. Not Siri. I'm sorry. Alexa. Thank you. Stop listening.
Oh,
Say
Alexa.
hi to Jeff. All right. So, no, Alexa,
You
stop,
ever
please.
notice? You ever notice how you never see Siri and Alexa in the same room at the same time?
I know. And then I got Cortana over here on
Uh
the
oh.
Microsoft computer,
Yeah.
and then I've got the Hey. Ooh, I don't want to say it. I've got the Google too, uh,
Oh, great.
and I make all four of them work for me. You know what's funny about that too, because we're so human in emotions, and I have caught myself getting short with Alexa, like because the
I know.
alarm won't stop, and I'm like, dude, you're yelling at a construct. What are you doing? It literally doesn't do it. But you know what I also like to do is I like to thank them, and they're like, "Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you."
I
You
know.
know?
You're a hidden Canadian then, because I remember when I first moved down here, I went to a drive-through and I said thank you, and the person said, "You're not from here, are you?" Because I just like, yeah, thanks. We thank bus drivers in Vancouver. You ever been to Vancouver?
Oh, you know what? No, but you know what? You are in that sense.
Okay.
I am a hidden Canadian because any service worker, anybody that does anything me, Apple Care, anything, I always tell them,
Yeah.
if they do a good job, get me your supervisor. You need a raise. Thank you. I appreciate you. I will say this too, and maybe even you as an actor, but doing this and being kind of in the public eye so much more, people kind of think that if we get the accolades or we get the feedback or the response, it actually doesn't come that much because you're either not approachable or able to, get to. So when somebody genuinely appreciates what I do, I am like,
Yeah.
thank you. This is so cool because you don't,
Same here.
yeah,
Yeah. But it's funny because you go to Vancouver. When I first came down here, I had to sort of readjust because I became very American, and I forgot that in Vancouver they line up for the buses, and I swear to God, I still do it. When you're off the back of the bus, probably 70% of people say thank you to the bus drivers are exiting the bus on the
I love
back.
that. I love
And
that.
and I had to, when I first go up, I have to change how I drive. Like, people won't drive with me for the first couple of days because I'm going 70 miles an hour, in Vancouver, which they don't really like.
Right,
And then
right,
I drive like a mate. They look at me like I'm Satan because I'm just taking my space. People drive too slow there. And then I have to come,
right.
I had to realize that you wait in line, and I would get, I had to get a little bit more, what's the word? It's not necessarily polite, but it's a different way of being. And then flip side, when I come back here, I've got to sort of remember that they're driving 90 miles an hour. And I got to
You
get
got to
back into
catch
that
up. You don't
mind
want to be
frame.
driving too slow because it's dangerous. I learned to
Yeah.
drive in New York. So,
Oh,
if I
Jesus.
turn on New York mode, and sometimes I do in the city, I want to get around, my friends are like, Jesus Christ, man, that was amazing. But like, I thought I was going to die. I'm like, yeah, that was nothing by New York
Yeah.
standards. I was being conservative, you know?
Crazy. I got hit twice by taxis in Montreal. Not big, like just at the intersections. Montreal taxi drivers are nuts and driving in Montreal.
Oh,
They're
New
also,
York cabbies.
oh
Back in the day,
yeah,
I'll just tell two quick stories. We had a cab driver one time come around the corner when we were kids, just barreling around the corner. And literally, we jumped up and kind of like bounced back off the hood of his car. Like we had to push ourselves back or we would have been hit. And then the second time, this was so funny. We were down on, like the Lower East Side or something. I don't know what we were doing, but we were late for something. We're like 15. And we jumped into the cab and we're like, we need to be uptown like right away, hit it. And the dude was like, he thought he was like on some Telly Savalas show or something. The dude just was going 90 miles through an hour through Manhattan. And we're like, dude, it's okay. It's like not a bank robbery or anything.
no,
He's like, no, I will get you
no,
there. I will get you there. And he just, it was awesome. It was really fun.
yeah. I will sometimes. My mother won't drive with me. She always tells me, "Oh, drive macho," and I'm like, "I'm just driving, mom." Now she goes like, 22 in a 30 zone. So but you can't get mad at your mother. I'm like, come on, mom, just go the speed limit,
No.
please. Well, I can't. What if someone sees me in your car? Just go the speed limit, please. So I had to do a
Well,
lot. I had to
listen,
do a lot of drive. I had to do a lot of driving today. It was one of those Los Angeles days where I think
you
I
can't get
drove
away from it
40.
there, right? I
Yeah,
guess unless you can get a
yeah. I did
helicopter
60
or
miles
something.
today. 60
Wow.
miles today. Yeah, just to go to escrow the bank and back to escrow.
Oh yeah,
So
congratulations.
thank you. I signed today.
That is awesome, my friend. Got a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
digs. That is really
My
awesome.
very
I have
my
a
very first homeowner. I'm a homeowner for the very first time. So
congratulations,
condo owner. Thank
congratulations.
you.
Yeah, I have speaking of driving, I have some friends up, in Northern California, and then one of my great friends and creative uh Dania Denise, actor and a filmmaker, just one of the most talented human beings I've ever met in my life. And she lives up north. And, she will call me, and it's when she's driving, from LA back up north. And of course, people make that trip all the time. And,
Yeah,
it takes forever. It's like if you live in New Mexico, and you just drive like 400 miles just to get some milk practically. You're just used to doing it. But you can also out there at least, and in like Montana, at least you can go 100 and nobody's going to care.
yeah, yeah. When I drive back to Vancouver once in a while, and every time I hit 100 at some point, I have a little rule that before I leave California, I've got to hit 100 miles an hour. And I bought a
I
new
like
car, which
that.
makes it easier. But I used to do it in my old 2002 Accord. I put on "She Sells Sanctuary," which is my 100-mile-an-hour song, and I always make sure that there's someone ahead of me who is going like 90, and let them get ahead of
So
me
they
because I
can get
figure
the
the cops
ticket.
are going to get them. And then I figure I've got that's my time. So I will every time I drive both ways, I have to hit 100 miles an hour. I whenever I cross the border, I don't know if you're Tragically Hip, the band Tragically Hip. They have a song called "Last American Exit." I save that song until I'm getting just to the border, so I play "Last American Exit" as I'm
Oh, I
crossing
love that.
into Canada, and as I cross back in, I play Green Day "American Idiot," and that's my driving
Oh, that's a
tradition.
ritual
First thing
right
I
there.
play
I
is
love that, dude. I
that's
want to
my
take a road trip
ritual.
with you sometime. I just a quick speed story when I was 18. Now this is just two guys telling old stories, which is fun. When I was about 18, my parents were moving, so I was kind of just dating a girl. We weren't that serious, but long story short, her dad owned a car dealership. He gave me a job selling cars, and then on the weekends, um, he would flip me either his Corvette or I would drive an IROC Z28 because
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
they wanted to give me a Cavalier, and he was like, no, 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 give him an IROC because then when I need a car with a car seat, we can switch. So I would have a Corvette, but this night I happened to have the IROC, and it was about 2 a.m, and it had the vet engine in it though, and so I had that thing floored. I have no idea how fast I'm going because back then it was that short period of time where the speedometer only went up to like 75 or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
measuring myself against the mile markers, and I'm hitting more than 2 in 1 minute. So I'm hauling, and I come over this
That's
hill.
fast.
I'm going more than 120. I come over this hill, and there's a state trooper, and I'm like, fuck, blank, blank, blank. I am toast. And he is doing it for the other direction. Right. So he sees me though, and he pulls me over and he's like, by the time I got the gun on you, I had to turn it around and I got you at 80. But he's like, I know you were doing way more than that. And I'm like, oh God, this is horrible. I just got the job. I'm going to lose my job. But then he goes, wait, does that have the Corvette engine in it? And I'm like, oh, I'm golden. And I did the walk around. I sold that guy on the car 100%. He was trying to decide between
Wow.
that car and a Corvette. Now, granted, a brand new 1984 top of the line Corvette at the time only cost 17 grand, which is a lot more than 17 grand. But I mean, so the difference between these two cars wasn't huge, but they're quite a bit different car. So then he's like, all right, let's go sit in my car. And I'm like, wait. I thought I just got out of this because I got an appointment for him to come drive both. And he's starting to write shit
Wow.
up. And I'm like, dude, because right this time I know his name. Like, and I ran around with him for a while. We became friends. He wasn't that much older than me. And I said, I didn't call him Mark then because I didn't know him that well. But I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You're right. He's like, no, I'm not writing a ticket. But he said, I already phoned it in. I already called it in. So I got to give you a warning because I'll get in trouble if I don't at least, because,
Right.
I had already noted that this kid was toast. And then he said, but I can give you a warning and you'll be fine. But oh, and then just one other quick story about that. When he would pick me up sometimes, we would go to pick up his wife. She was a stewardess. And so we'd run out to the airport and he'd be in his squad car. He's a state trooper, and they would keep their cars. And so we would be going down the highway like in the middle of the day, 90 miles an hour. People would be flipping him off because he's in his civilian clothes, right? And I'm
Right,
like,
right,
dude,
right, right.
we got to go bust that guy. He's like, dude, if I busted everybody that flipped me off, he said, that's all I would do all day long. I'm like, I wouldn't flip up a cop. But he's like, oh, he says it happens all the time. So,
Yeah, and you know what? We should be allowed to. I mean, it's free speech. It's so funny. It's so funny. The first thing I thought when I heard that story was we called it an IROC Z.
oh,
The
yeah,
candidate
right. ZZ. Yes. IROC
Z is
Z.
Z. So it would be like a ZX, which I think sounds cooler. But it
I
made
do
me
like the
think of the
Z.
stupid. Yeah, it made me think of the stupid stuff we did when we were kids. We used to have this game because I grew up in a small town called Chilliwack. So we had a lot of country roads. I can't believe we did this. We had this game where we'd lie in the hood of the car, and then our friends would drive side to side so you could hang on the
Oh,
longest.
God, Patrick.
And it was
I
just,
did a lot
it
of
was just,
stupid things in my day, but that's pretty crazy.
we had one where you stood in the car and see how long you could stand. And this, we do that in the field. At least we were smart enough to go to grass for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one. But it was just like insane. I mean, literally like hold on to the front of the hood on the side, get your fingers there, and just see
Right.
how long you can hold on while someone's spinning the car.
Like in
It was
some
just
movie. But you know
crazy.
what I mean? That's what it's like when you're 13, 15, 16. You feel invincible.
Yeah,
You'll
you
do
think you're
anything.
invincible. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep.
I'm
Then you
glad
get
I got
then you,
over that.
well, your body tells you one day, you wake up and all of a sudden you can't get out of your car. I did you ever
Right.
have this where I got out? This is when I knew I was getting old. I was driving back from Vancouver and I got out and I stopped at a gas station and I couldn't straighten up because I got out of my car for about 10 steps and I'm like, oh no,
Oh, well,
oh
here's my
no,
little
I'm
thing.
that guy now.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there many times, and I need double knee replacement here, which hopefully we'll get soon. But you're old when only old people think you're young. So when an 80-year-old says, "Oh,
Yeah.
Sonny, you're so young," and a 30-year-old says, "Oh, you're so young," I'm like, "No, you don't think that. I know you don't really believe that. You know you're
Nope.
old when only an old person thinks you're young."
Yeah, and as an actor, you're getting older because you start playing cops, then you play detectives. Then I started playing captains. Then I started playing bar owners who used to be cops. I'm like, I'm gotten old
Oh,
now.
I love
You
that. You
know,
got promoted
you,
all the way up
you
through
get,
the
and
ranks,
you
and then
realize
you had to retire.
then you realize you're getting old. I think I had a breakdown for something that said older man. I'm like, I guess I'm there now for a commercial. I'm the older man now.
Hey,
But
it
we're
pays the
so
effing bills, right?
and you know what? We're just so different from what 50-year-olds were like when I was in high school. I never forget. I was in high school once, and I saw a banner for the class. I graduated in '85, and I saw a banner for reunion of class of 1955, thinking how old those people must be. Until I realized that
Right.
that would have been us putting a banner up in 2015, going class of '85. But I
Right.
think we are a different generation.
Oh, we
I
are,
think we're
because
younger than our parents.
when I was a kid, 60-year-olds dressed horribly and used
Yeah,
canes. I'm
yeah.
56, for God's sakes. I'm still going to be wearing a Mandalorian t-shirt when I'm 70, you
and
know?
and I think that's a lot of it is that we have the technology, but our bands are still around. We were very
Right.
very different generation. But there are days when you wake up and like things just hurt. And I
Oh,
also
yeah.
realize I'm weaker. Like I can't move. I'm not as strong as I once was. I
Right.
tore I tore with this rotator cuff coming off a curb cut in a bike. For God's sakes, two of them ripped off. Like I literally came off a curb cut, and I'm like, how
Dude,
the
you got to make a
fuck
better
did that
story up than
happen?
that one.
Oh, and I also remember I was doing a show once, and I had to get up out of a chair, and I remember people watching. My friend said, it was really great that grunt you did. I'm like, what grunt? I'm like, oh yeah, it was a choice. And I realized I watched it. I got up and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh damn,
Can you
I
do
didn't even
that
know I
grunt
did
again?
that.
Probably, because it's going to hurt again.
Yeah, because it was a choice, but I just did it. And
Yeah,
it's just yeah, I don't
that's
like getting old,
hilarious.
but I also realized too. I turned 50, and I don't know about you, but I had a bit of the classic midlife crisis. And I just realized that we still got a lot of time left. I just
Oh,
got to make
yeah.
the most of it. But I talk to a lot of younger people, and I remember, I know they're not going to hear it because I didn't hear it when I was 25. But what I would tell people who are in anything, whether it's music or acting or anything, is just realize how much time you actually have. And you don't feel it when you're 27 or 30. You feel
Right.
old at 30. You feel old at 35. But you have so much time and you're so young. I mean, I felt so old when I was 37. I would kill someone to be 30. Okay, I wouldn't.
Oh
Okay, maybe.
God, to be
Okay.
35, I was good looking and slim. The
Yeah.
okay, not maybe not that good looking, but
Yeah.
the but
No, you're
no, and
still good looking. We're
also
both still good
I tell
looking.
my 19 thank you. I tell my 19-year-old this all the time to try and reinforce it. And I tell this to I talk to a lot of young people too between our nonprofit and these things. I'm talking to them all the time. And I like
Just
to
the
use the
fact that we
example.
said we talked to, just the fact we said we talked to young people tells us everything we need to know. Carry on.
Exactly.
Carry on.
And so I use this example of I can remember, and of course, our memories are all conflated, but the rough memory is being at my locker in sixth grade and thinking to myself, okay, in 6 years, I'm going to be a senior. Well, I'm only
Yeah.
12. So that's roughly half my life, which is
Yeah.
forever. Now at
Yep.
56, if you tell me in 4 years I'm going to be 60, I'm like, crap, that's going to happen like next week. Time
I
flows
know.
differently in our perception. And it's really true.
Absolutely.
And I try to
Yeah. I
tell
remember.
people, yeah, well, 35 or 25, don't rush. Don't rush.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Don't rush. And, and middle age is not middle age. I mean, we call it that to make ourselves feel better. But at some point, I realized at 40, I was on the downslope. I mean, I'm probably not
Yeah.
going to make 80, you know? And that's a really strange place to be. Um, and I like everyone else, felt like I had wasted time and things I hadn't done. But then you have to learn how to talk to yourself and realize that I can't change things I haven't done. But you got to think about stuff I actually had done and what I had achieved, and you
Well,
kind of adjust where your life is.
if you ever have that thought, just watch this show and listen to what you told me you've done at the beginning of the show, because it's a hell of a lot. And that's a
Well,
great,
yeah,
great series of accomplishments. But I really do like, first of all, I love making this connection with you. And I really do like this truth that you've been telling people about, I didn't do this then. I didn't understand this then. I was wrong about this then. And you grow and you mature. And if you're open
yeah,
minded and you're willing to change, and I do this all the time with some friends in a lot of the work that we do around social justice and equity and all these things. I'm like, look, I am not an ally. I'm a co-conspirator. I understand the difference. And, it's great if somebody's an ally, please do. But if you can work up to co-conspirator, move up a notch, please do so. But I also know that I'm middle-aged white guy and I'm going to say the wrong things once in a while. So don't worry. Correct me. I'm willing to
yeah,
learn.
yeah,
I'm going to do microaggressions. I'm going to try not to, but it's in me. I've been around for a long time and I'm conscious of it and I try to do better. And I think that is a big difference when you meet some folks our age that are making the effort, at least. I think that's a
yeah.
big deal.
I do too, and I as I got older, I think that the trait that I value the most, well, not value the most, but one of the traits that I think is underappreciated or undervalued in humans is self awareness.
Hmm.
The people I really realize I really respect, that I know personally, and what I really respect is self awareness, because I've gone through a lot. I used to be 300 pounds. I used to do way more drugs than I do now. I just basically smoked weed. I was just basically unhappy. But I was able to get out of that because of self awareness, and that's the first step. And then you start doing the work slowly. You know, like I think we were talking before. A little plug for Noom, but at the beginning of the pandemic, I was
Oh, yeah.
260 pounds and I lost 40 pounds doing Noom. But it was, what I liked about that is that was all psychology, how I dealt with food, but it did really help to change how I thought about everything. And that's the lesson that I think the biggest lesson I've learned in the last 15 years is that we can't necessarily control how we feel. We can control how whatever we're feeling, how we react to that. We can change how we think. I think it's really important how we talk to ourselves. That was for
Very
whatever
much.
positive change I've had, all started with how I talk to myself. I have this little theory. A couple of friends had some fairly serious drug problems, and I would tell them it's what I call the clear water philosophy. say for example, you've got a pond that's got muck in it, or you've got a coffee cup that's dark. You can't take the coffee out of there. All you can keep doing is putting clear water in and diluting it. And eventually the balance of the muck and the coffee is going to change, and it's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter. And that's sort of how I try, what I mean about change, how I talk to myself. I can't take away the dark or the negative.
No,
I
you
can tell
can't.
myself a different story, and I can start talking about different things,
Right.
and eventually the balance will change. And that was for me personally, like the biggest thing that I've learned in the last like 10 or 15 years, which has prompted a lot of change. And there's a lot of things I still want to do. And I also had to come to terms with the fact that there's just certain things that are just me. Like sometimes I'm not very nice. Sometimes I get angry. Sometimes I'm a little petty, but at least I can catch myself and not be that as much
Right.
as I used to be, and
Right.
that's really all that matters.
Well, I love doing this too. I do this all the time. Again, I have the conversation every day, so it's easy for me to say I've had it in some ways. But because I love this. We were talking about physics and all this stuff too, but I really am fascinated, and this is why I love having folks that know neuropsychology and AI and all these things, because I'm fascinated with this idea of that my subconscious is telling me to say this. Like, wait, what? Like, who's
Yeah,
in charge? Wait, this guy that's talking, that's not me. It's this other thing. And so again, it is goes back to that us being a miracle, alone in this universe. The fact that I can think about the fact that I have a subconscious mind that is telling me
yeah,
what to say right now is freaky, but it's incredibly interesting. And so I often say this to somebody. I'm like, look, I'm going to try to put this the best way that I can. But right now, I just want to talk to your subconscious and go, don't take me seriously here right now. I'm only trying to explain this to them,
right.
but you're going to think it's doctrine because you heard it and it's not, right? Because what happens, we've learned when people hear a fact and it's incorrect, and then 30 seconds later, you correct it, the mind is like, nope, I already heard it the first time. I'm going to
Yeah,
believe the sky is purple. You can't change my mind, which is kind of one of the reasons why a lot of, there were a lot of trolling and everything with comments. But one of the reasons that some of the big companies ended the comments on their websites and stuff, and was because that first stupid bit of disinformation, people ingrain that in their head, and they were kind of
yeah,
responsible for the stupid things people were saying, because the first time you read something stupid doesn't matter. It's really hard to get that back out of people's heads. Well, we have to do that with ourselves all the time. You know what I mean? Like you said,
absolutely.
you have to tell yourself, dude, quit bullshitting yourself. This is, this is the
Yeah.
grass. This is the better thing. Think about this. Do it this way.
And at the same token, to not beat ourselves up for the parts or the traits of us that aren't
That, yeah.
necessarily the stuff we're most proud of. It's just it's all part of who we are.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I get to use it as an actor, so maybe that
Yeah.
helps that I get to use all of that, it's part of what it
Right.
is. But, I'm not as, I used to, for a while, thought, oh, I'm not as sensitive or nice as I was. But I realized, yeah, that's also true. But I also was a little bit meek before. And so it's not always a bad thing. There's always two sides to it. Yes, I would have liked to have been more, I don't say yes to everything as much as I used to. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as necessarily willing to help as much. And part of me thought that was a bad thing for all time. Well, yes, there's a part of me that's a little bit older and a little bit more curmudgeonly, but there's a part of me that's also stronger. And I think to life, for most things, there's always a two sides of
Yeah, there's
it,
got to be some give and take. I mean, let's just
Yeah,
be realistic. Again, you
yeah,
need the light to have the darkness. You need the darkness to have the light. You can't,
yeah,
I'm a determinist in a lot of ways, like, free will and all of this stuff is, the myth of it. Chris Evott has a great little book about it. And Dan Dennett talks about this stuff a lot. And it's hard to live your life as a determinist. But if you think about
what
it,
is that what is that what does that mean,
so a
being a
determinist would
determinist?
mean that, like we live in a deterministic universe. There's absolutely nothing you can do about anything. If
Hmm.
you decide, I'm going to turn left, and then you turn right, you are always going to turn right. So it is, the sum total of everything you do is, in a sense, already it's predetermined. You don't have any choices. You don't have free will. Free will is something that works really well for religion, for example, because you want your minions to think they get to make the choices. I'll give you an example of situational free will. We'll use the baseball example again, because people like Dan Dennett, and folks, you can write in, call in. I'm getting way out of my league here real quick, but we'll talk about something like situational awareness. So if I were to throw a baseball at you, in that moment that I throw it at you, you might have a little bit of free will to move or not move versus whether you were destined to kind of get hit by the baseball. But that in some ways is like a crutch. It's a way to kind of relieve ourselves from the horrible idea that we can't shape our future at all. However, I find it incredibly freeing because I find it very Buddhist. Okay. Yes, I have to pay my taxes. I have to go to work, but these choices that I make, I don't actually have to be as responsible for them in terms of stepping on myself, criticizing myself, because these things were going to happen. And you can extrapolate it out to this. For example, because if you are going to go to prison, do the crime in Sweden, because they've got very nice, hell, I've lived in worse apartments than the prisoners live in Sweden and eaten worse food.
Right.
If in fact we live in a deterministic universe where you really don't make a choice, and this is in the cutting areas of philosophy and the law, they talk about this stuff. If I'm going to rob a bank tomorrow and I can do nothing about it, it was predetermined. Why do you put me in jail to try to teach me a lesson to do better? I couldn't help myself. Now, maybe you still want to put me in jail, but you don't have to treat me like a slave and like garbage, because so that's what that kind of stuff's about.
See, that's really interesting to me, because I don't know if I can go all that way. What I will go to is that I believe in fate rather than, because what I think you're talking about is destiny in a weird way.
Okay, sure.
So where I can go, because what I don't like about that is that it goes against what I believe, which is that we can change who we are and change things. But what I will do is, I don't think that we're always destined to turn right. I think at times we can choose. But if we choose right, there are times when certain things are going to happen. I don't think that the path is from point A to point, I say from San Francisco to Los Angeles, is determined. I think within that, we can decide which roads we take. That once we make a decision, I think something's going to happen. But I do believe that we can decide whether or not we make that turn. That's sort of where I think I'll stop.
Right. And first of all, I'm nobody to dispute you on it. And secondly, even if I'm correct in my hodgepodge way that I explained it, what happens is it would be virtually impossible to not live your life like you have free will. It would just be incredibly difficult to do. It's kind of the same way around consciousness. We like to, maybe one of the reasons why we don't understand consciousness is we're not conscious. Now, in some ways it becomes a circular argument. However, it is really important if we're not conscious, because then the odds of us making a computer that's conscious are pretty slim if we haven't even reached consciousness. And it's also kind of an interesting philosophical thing, because if we're just walking meat sticks, again, these choices that you think you're making, you may not be making. So the reason that I like these things is they're fun to think about, right? But in our daily lives, for God's sakes, we've got to decide which way we're going to go, or we'll go batshit crazy,
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I do find it fascinating, because I was going to just bring it down to that exact thing. That to me, what you're talking about is the universe is the universe, physics works the way it works. But on the planet Earth, that's irrelevant, because we only have what we have on the Earth. So,
whatever your perception
to make a left
is.
turn. Yeah, my deciding what I do in my life is not going to change what happens in physics. Physics is going to happen. The universe is going to carry on, and it then comes down to scale. Then you get into weird shit like quantum physics. So, if we go, this always fascinates me. I'm making a big turn here, but if we go down to like the molecular level here, and we can look at a star and say it's 4.4 light years away from Earth, does that distance matter in quantum physics? And I'm asking this as a real question. Mm-hmm. Does that 4.4 light years matter when it's so small, when you're talking molecular stuff? Quantum physics on 4.4 light years away is just as small as it is here. And that
The
And so I
size
think
is enormous and small at the same time. I think is
and
kind
so
of what
then
you're
it
saying.
becomes when does it
Moot point.
when does it become so small it becomes irrelevant? And I think
Right.
that's sort of
Right.
where we're talking about the same thing. If you talk about the scale of the universe, what we do here doesn't matter. We can't change it. But
Right. Exactly.
all we have is here, and
Here,
that's what
right now.
matters. And within that, we can
Yep.
change. And so
No,
I will be a determinist in the sense of the grand scale of the universe.
sure. And that makes sense. And that, because I say this too to a lot of people, in the fullness of time, so the smallest measurable thing we know of, it's called a Planck length, right?
Yeah.
By Max
Yeah.
Planck.
Yeah.
In the fullness of time, 100 trillion years from the beginning of the universe to the heat death end of the universe, there's not a spot. There's nothing you can make small enough to even represent me in that time. That is how insignificant we are in the fullness of time.
Yeah.
But enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I did not exist, Patrick, for 14.8 something billion years. I will not exist again for 100 trillion more. That little bit that I get, most, again, it's funny, but most people don't get it, meaning, you're really lucky to get it, but you're going to spend the entirety of your existence not existing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's mind blowing because you're right. It means we are insignificant, yet at the same token, we have to live our lives as if it all matters.
And
It is,
cherish it
because
and
that's all
cherish
we've got.
everybody. And I know,
and that's,
right.
Yeah,
No, and
go
I
ahead.
know you're a peace loving, understanding kind of guy. You get that. Like when I think about, someone murdering someone or war, dude, it blew my mind. It's 2022 and we have war in Europe. What
I know,
the
crazy.
F, right? My grandfather, both my grandfathers fought in World War II. On my Scottish side, my fifth great grandfather was dragged here from the Highlands to fight for the British. Then his son fought in the Revolutionary War. His son fought for the North in the Civil War. His son then, let's see, what did not have to fight. He was too old. This was the 101. He was too old for World War I. But then his son fought in World War II. My dad missed it and I missed it, because of our age. But both of those guys survived, thank God, sacrificed a lot. One had, I know the one had, my grandfather on my mom's side definitely had PTSD, but it just galls me that in 2022, and don't get me wrong, I know we have war in Syria and places like that, and that shouldn't exist either. But when you're coming from the place that I'm coming from, you're like, war in Europe? What? No, stop.
I get that too until you look at and I feel that too, but then I look at it in a bigger scale going, we've had war from the very beginning of human civilization. It's constant. It's constant.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, periods of non-war or, and I mean, the people, I don't want people to misunderstand this. I don't mean that war is great, but in the grand scheme of things, they're the same thing, it's just
like
part of life,
I like to joke. The problem with people is people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
People want, there's greed, there's lust. Wars are usually fought over land or, wealth or whatever. Or in this case, a crazy guy in Russia. But I mean, no, but it's, you like to think that we can be somewhere. But at the end of the day, and this is a good place to go too, is that if you were to take, go back in time, 100,000 years, heaven forbid, snatch a baby. Okay, find an orphan baby. All right. Bring him to here today and raise him. He'll be fine. His brain's no different.
Yeah.
He'll perfectly adapt. And so, on the converse side of that, from 1.5 million years to proto-human to human, we're very much the same. We're very tribal. We have, nitpicking silverbacks. You can see all of this.
Yep.
We come from a pecking order, and that's hard to unpack. So when I have something like implicit bias, I come into a room with a bunch of actors who, are all of color or something, my little amygdala is going to go, everybody's different. But here's the choice that I can make. I can say, I know my amygdala is going to freak out here, but I don't have to. So I can go into the room with a smile on my face and be welcoming. And they're going to be just as scared as I am because of their amygdala, right? So I need to
Absolutely.
do everything I can to set the tone differently than, we do naturally. We can transcend because it's beautiful what evolution got us. We're here, but we can transcend
Yeah.
those things that we don't need anymore.
And we need to choose to do it. I mean,
Yes.
go look at the Spanish Inquisition and drawing and quartering. That was 400 years ago. I mean, we have to choose to be civil. I don't believe that we are. I believe human beings are kind. I believe human beings are generally generous. It's the raw materials. I think we have to choose to be civil. And I think that's why I don't have a lot of faith in us. Honestly, I'd give us 1,000 years. I do, because because
I feel
because
you, man. I feel you.
generosity, love, kindness, hatred, anger, all that stuff is like the ingredients. Again, you know, it's the choosing to be civil that makes it edible food, not just ingredients. And we have to choose that, and that's why it's all so precarious. Our democracy and our civilization and all. I mean, in our lifetime, our country told black people they couldn't do certain things in our lifetime.
Right.
Let's not
Civil
get up
Rights
on our
Act
high
wasn't until
horse.
69, I think, maybe.
Yeah,
So we were both
I
born
was.
before that.
We were born when there was still. I think I'm pretty sure there was still actually state sponsored segregation.
Oh,
We
yeah. Oh,
had
yeah.
apartheid. So let's not get up on our high horse about the shining city on the damn fucking hill. I mean, it's like but we need to. I think it. I don't mean that to like bring us down as a country, but I think it's important to realize that, because once we realize that, we can choose not to be that. But we need to know what it is we're choosing not to be, or we need to know what it is we don't want to be, and we need to know what it is we do want to be. But we need to know it to make the choice. So
Right.
that's
No,
all I got to say
100%.
about that.
No, I love that. You have to be informed about it. I wanted to swing us back to acting just a little bit, and then maybe we can dig into politics a little. But what we can do is we'll definitely have you back, and maybe, like I said, we've got the new politics show too. So I think that would be fun once I get that up and rolling, and maybe we can bring some guests and have some
Sure.
conversations and enjoy ourselves. But just I was kind of curious as it relates to acting, because we kind of talked about favorite kind of films that you worked on, but especially being kind of a character actor, what is kind of like your like your it doesn't have to be one, because I'm not a big favorites, but give us a few of kind of like your favorite roles to act. Like you're working on this thing that this new one you were telling me, which I haven't had a chance to see, but like, what do you like doing? What are some of the roles that were just really fun?
Well, I mean, Glee, Ken Tanaka was a big one for me as well. Sideways was a big turning point too, because up until that point, I was always playing Thug One, Cop Two, always tough guys. That's not who I am.
Uh-huh.
And that role got me to play who I really am, just a regular dude. And then it opened up the possibilities of playing, sensitive characters with vulnerability, and I got to play a little bit of a romantic lead in Glee. It was my version, my ability to play someone who's in love. I like to explore that part of me, the sensitive part, the
That's
cerebral
cool.
part. At the same token, I also like to play the really dark part. I mean, in Joe Pickett, my character is not very nice. That's on Paramount Plus, by the way, and
Oh, I
Spectacles.
know. I'm gonna
Um,
I'm gonna sign up and watch
yeah,
it. I just had found out about it, so I'm looking forward to it.
then you can do what I do, which is just get like 4 different emails, which gives you 4 different 1 week trials. You see
Yeah,
4 different
dude.
credit cards. You
Dude,
see four
look, all
credit
you got
cards
to
with
do
4
with
emails. That's a
Gmail is
month of
just do
watching. Yeah,
revolution.mckinnis plus Paramount 2.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
I'm from the Napster days. I haven't paid for anything
yeah.
in 30 years.
Well, you got to pay for something, because that's got to come. Some of that's
No,
coming
I
to me.
do. I do
Yeah,
actually. I
no,
pay for too much because I have to go and cull it every once in a while.
yeah. I also like characters that are like me. I guess one of my favorite characters was uh from Men of a Certain Age, Jesse. Because he was a lot like me. I was a little bit more passive aggressive and petty back then. And that's who that guy was. That was a really fun job too. I got to work with Andre Brower and Ray Romano, and we had a lot of fun in that. And writing was really great. When you have really good writing and really good acting, and really good actors and a really good crew and good directors, that's when it's fun, when everyone's there doing it for the right reason. At the same token, I got no issues going in and just doing a job. I mean, ultimately, sometimes it's just a damn job, and that's
It is,
fun
right?
too.
That makes sense though. But I'm going to ask you this. This makes me think, because of course, when we see, one of the greatest directors with the greatest cast, right? Like Master and Commander, a film that hits it on every mark. When you've been on those films that have hit it on the mark versus a film that something just, like it just wasn't quite there. If you've been on that kind of film, does it really feel like, could you sense there was an issue, or have you been on a film that maybe didn't really quite make it, that the camaraderie and all those things were there? My point is, it's really hard to make a great movie. It's really hard to just make an average movie.
And I think what you're asking is, can you sense what you're shooting? And honestly, I can't as much as you'd think I would be able to, because especially now, because it's a little bit like Starbucks. It's kind of comforting that it's always the same. No matter where you are in the world, the sets look the same. The process is the same. The crew all dresses the same. For years it was all New Balance. Everything's the same. You can tell when it's really good. It's harder to tell when it's going to be bad, because
gotcha. So when it's really good, though, you can feel it.
Yeah, and I just find it always so much fun. It's really hard for me to go, I hate doing this, and I've been on some stuff that's really fun that isn't that great, but
sure,
the fact that it's fun makes it good enough. I mean, Glee was a really interesting one, because it's hard for people to remember how groundbreaking that was at the time, because it influenced so many things. And I remember when we were shooting the pilot, just going, we don't know if people are going to like this. We don't know. Because we had no idea. We knew it was good, because you can feel quality. You can feel it when it is something that's special. It's a little harder to feel it, I mean, unless it's really bad. I mean, I've also been on sets that were not very pleasant, where the movie was good. I mean, because sometimes it just comes down to a craft. Not everyone has to always get along. I've actually worked with people I don't like, and I'm sure there's people who don't like me. But it's a damn job. That's
right.
Just
At the end of the day,
down to.
Yeah, to actors, a lot of times, right? It's a work, it's gig, it's a job. Let me ask you this too, because God, for God's sakes, you've worked with some of the greatest directors and actors, in film. If you could work for a couple of directors that you haven't, and they don't even necessarily have to be living or dead. I mean, like, who would you love to work with?
Well, I'd like to work with James Cameron, even though I think I'd be too scared to before, just because, he's got such a reputation, but he makes brilliant stuff. I mean, obviously there's Scorsese. Geez, I don't know. I mean, there's just Joe Carnahan made some great movies, P.T. Anderson. I'd also like to work with someone new and young.
Sure. Okay.
That's always thrilling, because it's kind of nice to be. I don't do as many student films or for lack of a term, average films I used to, but I look back on them. What I kind of like is sometimes they don't know any better and do things that we wouldn't think to do because we're not supposed to. And it's really nice to have that energy around, that enthusiasm, that just like, well, let's just fucking do it.
Right. Well,
you don't want it to be too much of a job,
Right. Right. Well, I will say this, because I'm sure you can find those, but I've got quite a few friends that would probably shit a brick if you were willing to, even think about doing it. And these are friends. I mean, these are accomplished folks, but you know what I mean? But they're still starting it. So, I always, I don't take umbrage and say, I think you should work with this person or that person. Shit, I don't know anything about it. But like I said, I do know some people that I can show you their films, and you never know. You might want to say, oh, I like this person. That might be fun, because
if someone's willing to fly me to Chicago, I'll think about it.
Oh, hell, there you go. Well, I got friends out there in LA too. You just never know.
Nice.
And I just like showing off my friends' work too, right? Regardless, because there's some great filmmakers. I have the folks on the show all the time. And my friend Dania, she former Miss USA Petite. an outright fine artist on her own, filmmaker, actress for 20 years.
Right.
There are people out there working in this business like you. They know your face. There are people that are doing commercials and been working their butt off that are great, but nobody even knows who they are. I mean, it's a big
Yeah,
business in a small town.
it is, and they should also know that. And I honestly believe this: they're no less of an actor than I am, or than Academy Award winners. I mean, I honestly
Right.
believe that. What determines whether you're an actor, or in my mind, is not how many credits you have. Once you decide to do it, you're as much of an actor as anybody else. I respect the dream. I
Yeah.
respect. That's what I respect. I don't just respect. I mean, I respect also the reputation and the work, but it's the
Right.
dream that juices me. I mean, I would be in acting
I
class
love
sometimes,
that.
and I would get sad every once in a while because I'd look around and I would say that out of these 27 people, 25 of them at some point are going to have to quit. It helped me it would make me realize how fortunate I am that I didn't have to make that decision. You
Yeah.
know, as much as I respect the dream, I also really respect people that decide they want to do something else. It's not necessarily a failure. They just move
Right.
on. At least they followed the dream.
And
It
they
took me a
tried.
long, they tried, and it took me a long time to get over the fear. There's so many things I didn't do until I realized that I would rather go down swinging than have never taken a chance. You know?
Well, Patrick, I think what we'll do is because it's been about 2 hours, and like you said, old
Yeah,
bones here. But
yeah,
I would love to, and I think we will. Let's maybe have you back on here, and then maybe on, so far this week in the chai or something. We'll talk, obviously,
sure,
and because
anytime.
we can do politics, I really would like to do that. But I think this has been such just an amazing conversation, and I really do. If you're watching this and you have friends that are actors, please have them watch this show because I've learned, and in fact, I am going to be, keep your fingers crossed, because I've always kind of been on the broadcast side, but I've got some opportunities to do some voice acting and stuff coming up, and I'm learning from
You
somebody that
should.
is an
You
excellent
got a great
teacher.
voice.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
you
Thank
should
you.
do it.
That's an excellent teacher. And I've picked up some things tonight that are going to be helpful. And I just want to again say to you, look, you're just a dude, and I love that. You're a genuine guy. This has been a great conversation. However, you're a very accomplished person and an example of that, two of that 27 that I like to say this too. Your dreams don't come knocking on the door 3 months after you quit and give you
Yeah,
what you want. You have to stick to it. And you are a product of pushing through. And it's freaking
thank you,
wonderful to talk to you.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's funny. That's the one last story that reminds me. I remember I think it was first week of theater school. We had a relatively famous teacher come in and talk to us, and we had just started. I never forget. She never forget. She went and said, "Look at all you guys. So I want to let you know this. You're all 20, 18, 19, 20, 21. The actors that are successful and still doing this at 40 weren't necessarily the best ones in this room when they were 20. They're the ones that kept doing it. And I never, ever forgot that. It was Carol
Mm.
Rosenfeld actually told us that. So, but it's been great meeting you too. And it's the same thing. We got a great connection. I just love talking about this stuff. We can just
Yeah.
talk, which is great. And I'd come back anytime, anytime.
Oh, I am
Be
stoked.
happy to.
And
And if you're ever in Los Angeles, we'll go do this in person with some libations. And if I ever go to Chicago, we'll have some pizza
dude,
or something.
please, yeah, somebody give this man a gig in Chicago so we can hang out
Yeah,
and get, somebody give me some work in LA so we can hang out. That would be really
yeah.
fun. And again, appreciate you for doing this. And if there's anything, especially on this platform, it's owned by Mark Cuban. The genius behind it is Fallon Fatima. If there's anything you ever want to do on here, something, let me know.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I would love to help. If you just wanted to do a one-off show, I'll produce it for you. We could have some fun.
Sure.
Whatever. I'm just throwing it out there. But Patrick Gallagher, dude, what a great time. I am just honored to do this, that I get to talk to people that are amazing and that, I don't discover anybody. I just meet people, and whether anybody's heard of them or not, if I don't have fun doing this, I'm not going to do it. And this was a blast.
Yeah, same with me. It was really great to meet you. And I think this fireside thing is great. So I like Mark Cuban. I just like the Raptors better than the Mavericks, but we'll just leave it there.
I
But
love
it
that. I
was
love
really
that.
great. I really enjoyed it. I love talking about all this other stuff because no one else wants to talk about cosmology and astronomy and all that shit with me. So it's great to be able to do that. You know?
Oh, dude. Yeah. Well, you know what we
I
should
had a
do
great
then?
time.
Yeah, next time I have, we'll talk, but let's get a, Lord knows, I'm probably not going to get Kip Thorne on here, but we could have a fun science thing. You know what? I do this thing I did it on this other platform called, Could You Marry a Robot? And it's really funny because you can have like an actor, a scientist, a lawyer, and a comedian, let's do something like that. We'll have some fun, talk science
Yeah.
or something.
We'll see if we can
That'd be
find
great.
someone. Yeah. And it'd be nice if we could get someone who could actually I could learn something from too, you know,
Oh yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
love hearing that shit. So
Yes, please, nobody
cool.
hold me to any of my theories.
No, yes, yeah, because I get it's the stuff that I think I got right. Maybe I don't know.
Right. I may have just disproved everything people have been working on forever. But
Yeah, and so if I fucked up your great discovery, I'm sorry. You know,
exactly.
that's
Patrick
I know I
Gallagher.
thought I remembered it.
Yeah,
Great.
what a pleasure. I'm Revolution
The
McInnes.
pleasure was all mine.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm going to jump out of here real fast. We're just going to go talk with Revolution. What a privilege, my friend. Great to meet you. Look forward to much more. Peace be with you and namaste.
You too. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks. Great. Thanks. See ya.
Thanks, man.